start putting in your questions as they come to you, and we'll do our best to answer them all or find some way of following up with you if we can't get through them all. The session is being recorded for availability to IPA members who can't join today, and also for translation later on. So please welcome with me 4 colleagues from 2 IPA member associations who are going to be sharing their experiences with Z Library, a notorious pirate network, and how they managed to stop it. First, we'll be going to the UK and hearing from Claire Anker from the UK Publishers Association. She is Senior Manager, IP Enforcement, and has many years of experience in working with law enforcement agencies and the industry. After that, we'll hear from Jack Newton, Head of Content Protection and Enforcement, who joined the UKPA in 2022 and previously worked as Senior Anti-Piracy Manager at Springer Nature. They're going to tell us now about their role in tackling Z Library. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much. Let me just get my screen up and active. There we go. So thank you for joining us on this webinar today, and thank you, Jessica, for the great introduction. As she mentioned, I'm the Senior Manager for IP Enforcement here at the Publishers Association in the UK. I have a particular focus on anti-piracy work, having experience of both physical anti-piracy campaigns and digital initiatives within the UK. And my particular specialism is helping our members find where their books are being shared without permission, and helping them report what they find. So my intention today is to speak about putting into context some of the opportunities and legal remedies available to us here in the UK that we use to kind of try and help deal with Z Library, and show how industry worked together to try and make a multifaceted anti-piracy campaign that targeted this one particular network. So let's begin. I'm taking it back to 2009. Lady Gaga launched her debut single. Dan Brown is high in the charts. There's a recession coming to an end. Everything is good. And the digital market is booming. Here in the UK, ebooks were still very much a new offering for UK publishers and consumers alike. But sales were rapidly increasing year on year. So for example, 2008 to 2009 saw 20% jump in sales, 2009 to 2010, 40% jump in sales. So we were seeing increases at such a pace that we were all very confident that ebooks would be around for a very long time, but that the ever-increasing sales charts made it really difficult for us to monitor where sales were being lost to online piracy. So PA members came together and saw that there were likely to be problems ahead in the online world, particularly as sites like Napster, LimeWire, and the Pirate Bay were already proving resistant to overtures from music and film industries, which has seen significant drops in their revenue streams. Third-party provider services that were doing takedowns at the time were very much focused on music and film services and were quite expensive too. So PA members banded together to collate and share data about online piracy, and we created the Copyright Infringement Portal, which you can see in the bottom left of your screen. The reason I'm talking about the portal is because, from our perspective, takedown data is the most basic information building blocks relating to digital infringement. Whilst infringing pirate sites are based all over the world, the majority of them will know all about the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is a US piece of US legislation, which requires infringing sites to remove content or be at risk of further legal action if they do not comply. So these takedown notices are legal notices sent out to the infringing websites, which follow DMCA, or within the EU, the e-commerce directive, prescribed text requirements, which accurately identifies where an infringement is taking place on a website, and then formally requests that the item is removed from wherever it's being shared. Rights owners can use the sending of takedown notices to benchmark the scale of how infringing a site is to their catalogue, and use it to monitor the compliancy of a site by looking at how quickly an item is removed or whether it's just not removed at all. So we began collecting data about takedown trends from back in 2009. It gives us a window into what these sites are up to, gives us information about compliancy data, and allows us to track and monitor infringing sites. And as you can imagine, this means that we have an awful lot of historical takedown data relating to the Z Library network, which is one of the most severely infringing networks that has targeted our industry. Over the years, the Z Library network has switched domain many times, and every time, thanks to the portal, we've been able to track their moves quite quickly. So let's go back with the Wayback Machine, back to 2011. I'm sure many of you will remember around that time, there was quite a large network, library.nu, which was being targeted by rights holders through the Börsenverein and also through IPA, of course. As that network was falling apart, another site cropped up, bookfeed.org, mostly focused on sharing and making available Russian language content. But over the years, it spreads and increases in its scope. So from 2013, the Z Library network starts to branch out even more widely, and it has a variety of sites with specific specializations. These sites are very much more organized than the original bookfeed.org site, with bigger ambitions. They have a wider range of content in various different languages, although there are, of course, a lot of English language titles on the network. They have homogeneous branding, similar setup, and links through their communication systems and networks. These sites very much begin attracting the attention of creators and rights owners, and huge numbers of takedowns are being sent all across the network. To complicate things even further, the sites are circuitously interlinked. Some are offering read online options, some have a specific science focus, other sites are merely conduits pointing to where downloads can be obtained from within a different dedicated part of the Z Library network or on other database networks. Some of these sites are compliant to takedown notices and some aren't compliant at all. And to muddy things even further, some of the sites within the network have a subscription focus where users can pay extra for premium downloads of niche or popular titles, and the subscriptions were being taken via PayPal. It should be said that over the years, the network has experimented with various income generation schemes, such as commercial advertising, trying to generate income from the number of site visitors that they receive. Sometimes they've linked through to titles on the Amazon platforms, trying to generate affiliate income. But throughout the years, they've always been quite happy to receive donations from downloaders, whether through direct donations, through legitimate payment provision systems, through gift card donations, through, for example, Amazon, or more recently, through Bitcoin and things like that. So this is an example of a download page from Z Library, and as you can see, there's 4 different file types associated with any one particular title, and that's kind of very familiar across the network, which is they don't just have one of what you're looking for, they have multitudes of what you're looking for. So over the years, the sites are rapidly cycling through a variety of domains, and even to this day, they remain very flexible and quick to jump from one site to another in an attempt to hide their tracks. Over the first 12 months of the network's expansion, at least 10 new sites pop up, talking across bookos.org, bookfeed.org, bookre.org, book4me, bookza, bookos1, book4u, bookzz, booksy. It just continues. So historically in the UK, we've had both strong criminal and civil laws to help protect our copyright within our borders. Unfortunately, the Z Library network was based outside of the UK, so we had to be a little bit more creative with our attempts to disrupt the network and make it hard for them to benefit from piracy from UK consumers. PAN members were very individually active. We were sending takedowns, reporting payment accounts to PayPal, complaining to advertisers, complaining to the ISPs that were providing hosting services. We notified police both in the UK and beyond. And we were generally sharing information between all of the different members trying to tackle this network. But there were several initiatives going forward from 2009 that have really helped us try to meaningfully tackle the problem of online piracy here from the UK. In particular, back in 2010, there was a suggestion of a new piece of legislation, which was the Digital Economy Act. It was being pushed through Parliament as it was quite controversial. There was a lot of resistance, not just from UK consumers, but also entities like ISPs who were very resistant to some of the initiatives, for example, sending letters to downloaders that were found to be infringing. However, ultimately, it was established throughout the discussions relating to the Digital Economy Act that site blocking provisions already existed within the UK's Copyright Designs and Patents Act. And you can see the Act itself on the top right of your screen. This Act enabled rights owners to take court action against infringing websites through requiring the ISPs to block access to the infringing sites or networks. You can see from the wording on the slide, in the UK, site blocking is actually put in place by applying for a no-fault injunction against the consumer broadband service providers, so the ISPs like BT and O2, those kinds of service providers. Once the process of obtaining a blocking order was proven, various UK industries started to take the initiative against a variety of different sites. So we had Newsbin from the MPA, Pirate Bay by BPI, First Row Sports by the Premier League, and the UK is being established as a location that was very hostile to infringing pirate sites. UK publishers wanted to show that they also had a commitment to utilising the full reach of UK law. And in 2014, the PA started consulting with our members about whether our own industry should also be pursuing a site blocking action, targeting key infringing sites that were available to UK consumers. Our members agreed that they were supportive of the proposal, and after much consultation, we eventually targeted 7 target sites, which included a couple of Zeb Library sites too. At the time, we couldn't include more parts of the network because site blocking was and still is a very expensive initiative. And also at the time, it was untested to our industry. So we wanted to push through and make sure that what we suggested would be successful. The good news is that we did obtain a successful judgment in 2015, and the sites included in the application were and still are blocked to UK consumers. And we can still provide information relating to attempts to circumvent those blocks to the ISPs and have those blocked too. So for us, while site blocking is useful, it isn't necessarily the first option that we can pursue for taking action for an anti-piracy campaign. This is because sites are only being blocked to UK consumers. And as we know, books sell well internationally into many different markets. And so we would like to see a site blocking having a much wider impact. Whilst administrative site blocking, which is where the rights owners go through an officially recognised site blocking process outside of the court system, is under consideration here in the UK, we don't have any likelihood of that happening at this time. One other initiative that also helped us as an industry was looking at more information about consumer downloading behaviours. Ofcom, the communications regulator here in the UK, was assigned new duties as an outcome of the Digital Economy Act of 2010 and was required to assess the level of internet infringement here in the UK and to understand better about attitudes towards illegal file sharing. This work is now taken over by the UK's Intellectual Property Office, and as you can see, they've continued year on year from 2012 onwards. Measuring consumer behaviour has meant that creative industries have had a better understanding of the downloaders themselves, and also helps us identify methods to potentially convert casual downloaders towards choosing legal access routes. So, for example, creating resources like the content map, which points casual downloaders towards where they can legitimately access genuine content. But more importantly, the data generated from this project has meant that the creative industries here in the UK have had access to compelling figures that track year on year the level of infringements happening in the UK. And it allows us to demonstrate to government independent figures relating to potential income losses to UK PLC and help garner support from government to engage on the issue of online infringement even further. We also explored what the criminal enforcement options were as well. So we wanted to further support the work that was being done in the courts and the work that was being done through government. And happily, around this time, similarly around kind of 2010 onwards, the IPA was looking to further expand its enforcement work. And so they guaranteed the funding for PIPCU, which is the Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit that was set up in 2013 here in the UK. It's operationally independent and run by the City of London Police, which is the UK's national lead agency for fraud investigations. PIPCU is a specialist police team dedicated to protecting physical goods from intellectual property crime and also combating online piracy. It has a mission to investigate, disrupt, and prevent intellectual property crime that causes significant harm to the UK economy and to the general public. So protecting them from counterfeits, but also protecting business from online piracy too. As an entity, the Publishers Association is an industry stakeholder in PIPCU, and we engage with them on piracy issues through the submission of reports about infringing sites and by adding sites, which would include Z Library sites too, to what we call their infringing website list. This list is a list of sites that are authenticated as infringing by the police and then circulated on a restricted basis to the advertising industry in an attempt to prevent genuine advertisers accidentally promoting services to infringers and to prevent criminals benefiting from the proceeds of crime through the advertising networks. All in all, this is showing that there's kind of like a big surge in piracy interest from UK government and all of the agencies related to UK government too. We were riding a bit of a wave at the time. It was great. So with all the success that we were having on the official front, we then decided that we wanted to start targeting some of the other service providers too. And in particular, this was the tech industry. We did want to secure some help from them. However, they proved fairly resistant to wanting to work with us, as you can imagine. So here in the UK, industry was very much convinced that search engines should be seen as actively signposting towards infringements. And they were basically advertising the services of pirate sites to their users. We felt that if these links could disappear from search, site visitors would fall and the sites would be more broadly damaged by the lack of traffic, meaning a drop in advertising income and also a drop in donations as well. If there's no ability for them to generate significant amounts of money, there's no ability for them to continue as a site, basically. From the tech industry perspective, the whole where can I download kind of queries formed a large part of their search functions. And they thought that consumers would be very unhappy to see altered search results. They were not particularly keen to engage with industry on this matter. Thanks to support from the UK government, which brought together UK creative industry and tech, which was essentially through threats to force new laws through that would force the search engines to comply on a legal basis. There was extra pressure put on the discussions, and somehow a voluntary agreement came about. It was the creation of the world's first anti-piracy agreement between search engines and rights holders, and it's known as the Search Engine Code of Conduct. It's a voluntary anti-piracy code here in the UK, where it is agreed that the search engines will delist infringing sites from search, where those search engines receive a certain number of delisting requests from rights owners. The aim of industry was to make infringing content less visible and for it to be removed from search at a faster rate. And whilst these changes were initially targeted just at UK search results, eventually the suppression of infringing search results becomes implemented globally. This means that infringing links that for the largest sites are suppressed globally, and legal alternatives are supposedly automatically rising up in the search results because the infringing results are being hidden away. So everyone has benefited, hopefully. I mean, was this all effective? To a certain extent, all of the initiatives that I've touched upon have had their own parts in kind of targeting the Z Library network and have had different impacts, particularly from a UK perspective at different times. But eventually, every time Z Library would bounce back. My previous slides document the various routes we explored over the years to deal with infringements on a wider basis. Throughout the years, PA or publishers reported infringements to document the scale of the infringement problem. We froze payment accounts, we reported social media channels, complained to service providers, blocked access to the sites. In some jurisdictions, took the operators to court to try and seize the domains. Generally, we're making ourselves a nuisance to these site operators, and I'm sure many of you listening also did your own part to do that too. However, sadly, they were quite resistant to our attempts, and basically every time just continued on with their piracy activities, adjusting for whatever we threw at them. None of the actions that I discussed were necessarily a wrong thing to do or a bad thing to do. Different approaches can work at different times, depending on the attitudes of the site operators, depending on the policies of the particular service systems that we're targeting. Sometimes it's all just about sheer luck. But a lot of anti-piracy work is based on good fundamental data and trusted connections between those tasked with reporting infringements and their contacts in commercial or enforcement services. This is just to show that there's no single bullet solution to infringement, but that exploring every avenue that is available and using a multitude of resources is part and parcel of a well-structured anti-piracy campaign. So as you can see from my slides, by the end of 2021, the start of 2022, because this is their end of year 2021 update, Z Library is thriving. Its users are continuing to upload significant numbers of books to the database. It's looking to develop new access systems through its Android app, give itself secure access points through the Tor network. It's developing its own systems and services, so it's offering the ability to email a book to yourself, giving better search inside functionality, and all in all, doing a great job for consumers. At the PA, we agreed internally that we needed to do more to widen our anti-piracy work, particularly looking at this network. And so we agreed and developed a strategy for further action. We identified that Z Library was our preferred target, as it's significantly infringing across all of our membership. And we felt that there were enforcement opportunities to explore that hadn't previously been utilised. We put forward a business case to members, showing the breadth of piracy across the internet, and PA members agreed to increase our anti-piracy funding. We chose to use those funds as effectively as possible, and we commissioned a report to document the true scope and scale of the Z Library network, which gave us insights regarding the network's operations, a little bit of information about operators and links to other entities too. In our wider discussions with UK enforcement agencies, we were seeking guidance from them about how best to escalate these complaints about a global network, where we needed to link up with a wide range of enforcement bodies across the world. Luckily, with some intervention from a trusted source outside of publishing, our report was brought to the attention of Interpol, who were able to take a further look at the information supplied and wanted to engage with us further on this issue. And this is where I get to hand over to my colleague, Jack, who'll be talking all about our work with the police and what happened next with Z Library. Jack, can I pass over to you?
Thank you, Claire. Of course you can. I've got a few slides to share myself. Let me just set that up. Oops. Right, here we go. Thank you, Claire. I must start by saying it's an honour to be given the opportunity to contribute to this webinar, and it's a pleasure speaking to you all today. I'm Jack Newton, Head of Content Protection and Enforcement at the Publishers Association, where I joined in February 2022 and was immediately tasked to lead the investigation on Z Library, which I'll be talking to you about over the next few minutes. And I hope you can understand that in some areas, the detail that I go into may be limited. This is to maintain confidentiality with what is an ongoing criminal investigation. If I can also take you back to the 4th of November 2022, we woke up to discover the whole of the Z Library network was taken down after action by the FBI and the US Department of Justice. Nearly 2 weeks later, on the 16th of November, a press release was published by the US Department of Justice that confirmed that 2 individuals named Anton Apolsky and Valeria Ermakova had been arrested and charged with criminal copyright infringement, wire fraud, and money laundering for operating Z Library. The pair were arrested on November the 3rd, 2022 in Cordoba in Argentina at the request of the United States. At the same time, Z Library's network of 250 plus domains was also taken offline globally after being seized by US authorities. A week before the FBI action against Z Library, I was actually at a conference, and it was all about partnerships between law enforcement and the private sector to fight IP crime. So looking back, it was auspicious timing, since there was these exact partnerships and the coordination that proved pivotal in achieving the action against Z Library. I think the Z Library action caught a lot of the pirate community off guard, and it did in a way send a message. In the publishing world, we're quite used to seeing the big police raids and arrests in other creative industries, such as music, film, sports streaming. So I think it's really important to highlight the significance of this action. It was a great result for the whole of the publishing industry. As you've heard, Z Library isn't something new. We knew it was a big problem, and we knew it was getting bigger, as you can see on this slide I've up now. This shows the numbers in 2021 on the left, and on the right is a snapshot of the numbers just before the FBI and US DOJ action. I'm not going to read these all out, they speak for themselves, but the monthly visitor numbers more than quadrupled in just over a year. I should also mention the money aspect. So this is based on the rate of donations recorded over a set period of time. If this rate is maintained over a 24-hour period, then the numbers here that you see is what could be achieved by Z Library. So looking at the sheer number of visitors across their network, they were more than capable of attracting that level of funding being donated. So we're talking $40,000 per day potentially. Especially given the number of different ways users could donate money, as Claire mentioned, such as Amazon vouchers and various cryptocurrencies. We knew our members were hugely affected by the piracy across the Z Library network. And this was also evident in the responses from our first ever piracy survey that we did in February 2022. Z Library emerged as the #1 site our members were concerned about. I'm going to share some of the quotes from this survey. Z Library is by far our biggest piracy threat and impacts our business considerably. Our biggest challenge is Z Library, and I receive almost daily complaints about this site. I have a feeling I might have even done that quote, because I was also receiving daily complaints about Z Library. So you've heard about the 2015 website blocking action of the domains. We also had further successes in the UK against Z Library via the Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit. And they helped with payment disruption and the swift removal of the zlibrary.uk domain back in 2021. As you've also heard, in the UK, we are lucky to have a specialist police force. This is part of the City of London Police, known as PIPCU, Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit. The PA have been a supporter of PIPCU since its inception, and I'm actually personally privileged to have been on secondment at PIPCU since 2018. While my secondment does not give me the powers of arrest, sadly, it has put me in a position where, as the first secondee from publishing I've been able to show them the types of piracy threats and the issues that affect the publishing industry. And you can see that in 2021, as part of a proactive warning and educational initiative, PIPCU published a press release warning students and universities of accessing websites to find scientific papers. We knew that some areas of the network could be targeted for disruption. Through open source intelligence, we knew about some of the people running the network. We identified a requirement, commissioned a deep dive investigative report to document, map, and structure all the components of the Z Library network, importantly, in one point of reference. And this was done by a verified expert content protection consultancy. The report was structured to reveal the current infringing domains and associated subdomains of the Z Library network, locate the IP servers and identify network registrars and registrants and hosting providers, uncover the principles behind the network Z Library. As you can see here in this chart on the left, well, I say you can see, there is a reason why none of you can probably see this. This shows all of the interconnected domains, the subdomains, the IP addresses, the hosting providers, the name servers, everything that made up the Z Library network as it was prior to November 2022. As you can see, it's vast. This report gave us a holistic view of the network and helped shape our enforcement strategy that had the key objective of achieving significant disruption against the Z Library network. What was abundantly clear was that Z Library went way beyond the normal pirate site and was fundamentally an organized criminal network. An organized criminal network engages in criminal activities across multiple countries. This can include money laundering, counterfeiting, and drug trafficking as examples. The aim of the Publishers Association was to push the boundaries beyond what has been accomplished in the past against the network and go on the offensive against Z Library, but on a global scale. This involved referring the Z Library network to international law enforcement. We weren't alone. Our wishes and aims were shared by a number of other organisations who have begun their own form of escalation of the Z Library network with national law enforcement in their own countries. It can be a lengthy process when escalating a crime to international law enforcement, and by this I mean Interpol. Now, as great as Interpol are, it is important to explain that they are quite different as to how Hollywood portrays them. They are essentially an international hub of coordination for law enforcement. Interpol does not carry out investigations or arrest people. That is the responsibility of the national police, all of who are members of Interpol. We don't actually have a national police force in the UK. There are 44 geographic forces in England and Wales, and a single force in Scotland, and one in Northern Ireland. There is also specialist police forces, such as the British Transport Police. Now, the process of escalation within the UK to Interpol starts with the local police force. Then our National Crime Agency, before involvement at Interpol level. As a trusted partner with PIPCA in the UK, we had the opportunity to share our reports and intelligence directly with Interpol, and we managed to avoid the longer process of case escalation as Z Library was known by Interpol already. Armed with our intelligence and experience over the years investigating Z Library, we helped coordinate a coalition of law enforcement organisations to take on the investigation. That includes the FBI in the USA. Our intelligence proved to be a missing piece in the puzzle. There were some key areas within the Z Library network that we felt could be targeted, such as the same domain registrar company being used for over 200 of the domains. And we also demonstrated the potential financial support Z Library could be getting by donations. Around the similar time, law enforcement discovered that two key people thought to be operators of Z Library had left Russia and were traveling around South America. They were arrested after triggering an active arrest warrant in Cordoba, and law enforcement were able to synchronize the domain seizures at the same time of the arrests that resulted in this highly successful operation. As I'm sure you can understand, there are never any guarantees with law enforcement actions, and investigations do take a long time. So as part of our Z Library enforcement strategy, and prior to the law enforcement development, we had also begun looking into a UK website blocking action against the expanded Z Library network, and had received the support of several members. Though the blocking action was postponed, it was clear that the work that we did on the network and shared directly with law enforcement was instrumental in the law enforcement development. To my knowledge, action with such impact is the first of its kind in publishing. We were over the moon to have provided critical assistance to enable this as part of our content enforcement work. It was hugely encouraging to witness how motivated law enforcement were to try and do something about Z Library. This continues as I speak. The work against Z Library carries on. It took almost 4 months for Z Library to return to the surface web after the domain seizures, albeit with a depleted structure. But the investigation is still very much open. We've won a few key battles. Further domains have been seized, and work is ongoing to disrupt the Z Library donation revenue streams. The war is not yet won. Our law enforcement partners remain determined in achieving a prosecution and put an end to the Z Library network. The outcome last November demonstrates the power of coordinated and targeted international law enforcement action. And it also shows that public and private sectors can work together effectively to combat a major piracy threat. This is something that we hope can happen again and again in the publishing industry's fight against piracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack, and thank you, Claire, as well. That was incredibly interesting. So this is the moment for our members to put their questions in the Q&A functionality. I see that there already was a question that Claire has been able to answer briefly in writing. Claire, is it okay if I relay that to our listeners? So Claire was asked, speaking of the costs of this kind of intervention that are on the side of the rights holders, what sort of a range of cost are we talking about there? Claire, would you like to respond, or shall I just read out what you?
I can go back to what I was saying, which is that the costs range quite significantly depending on the kinds of sites that we're looking to target. It can be anywhere from an easy straight shot individual site, probably around about 10,000, but there could be potential risks of targeting larger sites or sites which are much more challenging to describe from an evidentiary basis. So we're looking at anything from 10,000 up to 100,000. So that's quite a lot of kind of potential cost to bear. So one of the things that we do try and do is, if we are looking at site blocking, as we were more recently, again, as Jack alluded to, is looking to site block multiple sites in one go so that we can share some of the evidencing and witness gathering costs, that kind of thing.
Thank you very much. I see the questions coming in quickly now. Another one is, perhaps the team can describe whether they think this successful process could be replicated to tackle other piracy threats. So can it be expanded to other scenarios?
Shall I take this one? Absolutely. I think the whole process showed that there are ways to achieve a result. I think in the Z Library example, I mean, you've just seen just how vast this network was, but it doesn't have to be in the same kind of structure as that. It could be a single domain that's taking loads of visitors, but I think we're quite well placed now to share all of our data and work with law enforcement. This is kind of, the Z Library is a benchmark, I guess you could say. So I'd be hopeful to kind of use that as a template in the future for other networks.
Very interesting. Thank you, Jack. There's another one to Claire. Whether publishers who are not members of the UKPA, can they use the portal?
Yes, they can. I would encourage all rights owners, whatever they choose to do, to use some sort of takedown reporting system. As I said, it gives you some really fundamental data about where the biggest problems are for you as a business and how you can translate that into, okay, what should we be targeting? Where should we be pushing our biggest amount of resource and our biggest amount of effort? And without any kind of monitoring of where you're sending and whether those sites are complying with your takedown notices, you really might have a risk of missing that kind of information. And it is really important. It's something that we use in our discussions with government, with other publishers, with other trade associations, in submissions to the EU, so Special 301, all of that kind of thing. Knowing who the problems are that are out there is really key. Definitely do something. Something is better than nothing. Do something.
That's very encouraging. Something is better than nothing. I like it. There is a question here, I think from Nigeria. A member of the Nigerian PA has complained about infringement by Z Library on their books. So what is it that they could do now?
So I would be looking to communicate with the other members of the Nigerian Publishers Association, harking back to my previous answer about fundamental data, giving you a lot of information, banding together, identifying how many takedowns you're sending out as your particular industry, and then turning around and going to your government representatives and saying, this is a big problem. We've notified this site so many times that we have this massive issue with them making available our content. As an industry, we are spending this much time, this much energy, this much resource on reporting these infringing sites. And of course, it's not just Z Library, it's across many other sites as well. What are you as a government are going to do about it? Because we are losing income and so is Nigeria. What else can be done to support us? And whether that's innovating, as I mentioned in some of my answers, talking about, what the government can do to support industry to help itself, and what the government can do as an initiative on its own to kind of promote, the different creative industries, that kind of thing. There's all kinds of opportunities out there, and don't be afraid to ask for it and to innovate with your solutions, because what might work for you might not work for us, and vice versa. But definitely band together, know what your problem is, and tell people about it as much as possible.
Thank you, Claire. That sounds like very sound advice. This one also goes to the UK colleagues, obviously. What's your assessment of the current state of Z Library as it compares to the 2022 snapshot of metrics that was shared here? Can you comment on that at all, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's the network as it stands now. Its surface web presence is massively depleted. Now, yes, there still are domains. You may have noticed the change in their ways. So instead of relying upon a big network of 200 plus domains, they're offering this kind of personal web domain. So you have to have a login firstly, and then you get given a sort of unique URL every time you log in to access books still. But the initial reports from Z Library on that way was that this was immune from law enforcement efforts, but it's not at all. They're still connected to a web surface domain that can be seized. Now, something very, very, very fresh, as I only saw it this morning, was Z Library are now they've launched some desktop apps via Linux, Windows, and through Apple. Again, this is sort of the investigation continues. We're not stopping now. As they change their tactics to try and evade all of the attention, we sort of point the cannon in the different direction. We would aim to speak to Apple, speak to Windows to try and block those apps as an example. I know law enforcement are constantly looking at it. And yeah, this is the motivation industry wide and law enforcement wide is there, and we adapt every time that they adapt.
Thank you, Jacques. I think that fits quite well with the next question I've got here, which I can hear the frustration. Our colleague is asking, for every Z Library down, another alphabet of illegal sites pop up. It's the whack-a-mole game, isn't it? So what is done about those who are inviting Z Library users to find other such sites? In other words, is it illegal to point users in the direction of illegal sites?
I mean, it's not ideal, but I'm going to spin it slightly. It's not ideal, but it's actually helpful, because then we can use that and see where people are going, or if if a new network is hatching from somewhere, we'll be able to sort of like track that immediately, because they're not going to shout from the rooftops. They're not going to publish a press release saying, "Oh, hey, here's some new pirate sites to go to." It's all it's all social media, or it's on platforms like Reddit and Twitter. When problems do get big, do become quite big, then obviously you can use the sort of all the options that have been used so far. Yes, it's a whack-a-mole game, but it is also helpful. And my conversations with law enforcement, they do say, we're not going to take this down just yet because it's a useful source of information.
So there's a bit of strategy behind that. Yes, interesting. The final question that I can see in our Q&A at the moment is to you, Jack. You only mentioned academic journals being pirated by university students. What about textbooks? I imagine it's probably similarly bad, but you'll tell us.
Yeah, so that was in relation to, I think that was in relation to the PIPQ warning. I mean, yes, students will try and access absolutely everything. It was a quite successful press release that after that, I learned that a number of universities blocked, and this is in relation to the pirate domain called Sci-Hub. I know a number of universities in the UK blocked access to Sci-Hub from on their networks. Something that that we've done this year is again write to all of the universities in the UK, but we're targeting the senior leaders at the universities, so the vice chancellors and the IT directors. And in a similar way to PIPQ, it's kind of like an education. It's educating them against the risks of accessing all pirate sites, not just ones focused on academic papers, but on so sort of as I say, the risks about accessing them, and to find other ways of or use legitimate ways of accessing all content, to say not just papers, books as well. That was something that we did at the end of last month. Again, a lot of universities responded very positively, as far as saying that they're again going to block access to these websites. And there is another workflow that I'd quite like to work closely with, that's sort of being led by PIPQ to hopefully help that as well.
Thank you very much. It sounds like we're reaping the benefits of having an open conversation about the problem, which is encouraging. So many thanks to our UK colleagues. I'd like to move on now to France. And we have with us from the French Publishers Association, Catherine Blache, who is Senior Counselor International Policy there, and Julien Chouraki, Legal Director, who joined the French PA back in 2006, so also has extensive experience of work on piracy. They'll tell us now about their work on site blocking, a site blocking lawsuit, and how they used some of the EU framework legislation, the EU Copyright Directive of 2001, against Z Library. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Catherine Blache. I'm in charge of European and International Affairs at the French Publisher Association. I'm here today with you with Julien Chouraki, our legal director. I will be very happy to present you our legal action against Z Library. Let me share my screen. Is it okay?
Yes, Catherine, we can see it.
Thank you. All right. So basically, we're going to talk again about Z Library. Nothing new, but a different angle. So basically, SNE chose to target Z Library this website presents itself as a free library since 2009, which provides access to over 8 million books and 80 million articles. All publishing sectors are concerned. So the discussions at SNE started in the first half of 2021 within the SNE's Piracy Working Group. It brings together the legal departments of the main publishing houses that are members of SNE. The majority of publishers expressed their support for a strategy by the SNE against piracy. So this led to the following action program. So first, the idea was to bring an action under Article L 336.2 of the French Intellectual Property Code against target website Z Library. And at the same time, defining a standard strategy that would enable us to systematically launch blocking and delisting actions taken against websites offering illegal content. So this article for our legal action is implements Article 8.3 of the 2001 Copyright Directive. So our European colleagues might be familiar with this procedure. The aim was to obtain a blocking by the main internet service providers, dereferencing by the main search engines used in France, and possible updates and or extensions of the measures ordered to other so-called mirror websites. So between March and July 2021, we first worked on the method. We decided that the action should be launched by SNE itself with the support from the publishers and an equal sharing of the costs of the action. We chose our legal advisor after hearing several proposals. We also chose LeakID to assist us with the technical aspects of the project. And 12 publishers have signed up to this initiative. Then on September 2021, the SNE board gave its formal agreement to initiate the injunction against Z Library. So from December 21 to June 2022, which was quite a long time, this was the period of investigation of the case, which was quite complex due to the structure of the website, which we just saw thanks to our British colleagues. The mapping was actually reviewed and updated several times.
And we identified more than 200 domain names. So it's very huge for this kind of website.
And then there was an extensive elaboration of the raw results provided by LeakID. So it took until June 29th to prepare the complaint. So on August 25th, 2022, the Judicial Court handed down its ruling on the basis of Article L 336.2 of the IP code. The ISPs were ordered to block a large number of domain names providing access to this website. So we were very glad because basically this was a first successful experiment, and this will enable us to develop our anti-piracy strategy. So this strategy is based on blocking websites on the basis of particularly quick court decisions, as you saw, no more than 2 months from the date of the summons. And you can see here the estimated budget for the legal action.
And just a word about a previous decision in previous criminal proceeding. It took almost 10 years for Team Alexandri's case. So it's very more efficient.
But then, as you know, at the end of February 2023, we read in the press about an attempt by Z Library to reappear and new domain names associated with the website. So basically, the website changed the way it is accessed.
So it's I'm not a technical expert, but I will try to explain that each user has an access to their respective subdomains with logins. It's like each user has their own his own website and domain name to access to books. So here we have to identify and target main domain names and authentication website. It's very difficult.
So basically, it makes it very much more difficult to monitor. But by using the SimilarWeb tool, it is possible to note a significant growth in terms of traffic. For instance, from 200,000 single visitors to 1.3 million single visitors between January and February this year. So what was the SNE's reaction? So SNE consulted with the publishers who supported our initial action, our lawyers, and our technical service provider, LeakID. We found it appropriate to take summary proceedings before the courts for the additional blocking of new domain names. So this action now requires a new mapping of the website, currently being carried out by LeakID. And the idea is that this action would enable us to first keep the website inaccessible for most internet users who are not familiar with the technical strategies for circumventing the blocking, and also to put pressure on that library and weaken them in their attempt to recreate themselves and grow their audience. So you can see here the cost for this new legal action. And last month, the SNE board approved the decision to take this further action against that library. So we are now waiting for LeakID's new mapping, and we are working with our lawyers. So of course, as our British colleagues just mentioned, we obviously heard about the action taken by the FBI. In particular, that there was one key domain name, signallogin.me, which was seized by the FBI. So for us, this showed that the action we are taking in France is finding an echo in the US, and this basically reinforces our action.
So far, we have made the following observations with the help of LeakID. All of the domain names affected by the 2022 decision remain blocked by ISPs. At least 3 websites are still active, but these 3 websites are accessible using a VPN. One website seems to have all the content. The new domain zlibrary-asia.se. There are many scam websites such as z-lib.io, but they just seem to exist so that the real website may hide behind them. They have, as Jack said, they have expanded their options for access. They have developed a desktop app for Windows, Mac, and Linux. This gives direct access to the database. They still have their Telegram bot. You make a request for a book, and Telegram bot generate direct link to access to this book. They have developed an Android app, and they have a magic email to recover access to their account if it is blocked. So you can see that this is a platform that does everything it can to distribute content. This is like open warfare. We had considered taking action with web hosts, but they happen to be very uncooperative, like Cloudflare or Virtual System LLC. So we decided to keep up the pressure. Very important. Keep up the pressure even with only 5 or 6 domain names, even if their authentication website it's September to ask for additional blocking. And stay alert. Continue to monitor what's happening in the United States. And finally, the most important is we would find interesting to share information on potential new targets with other PAs. And there were shared interest about a specific website, we would find it efficient to cooperate together for the library and other websites. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine and Julia. That was very interesting to get your take on the same target. And of course, IPA is ready to help with that information sharing and collaboration that you were suggesting. I think that's an excellent proposal. One of the questions that reached us near the beginning of your intervention was that, can publishers whose books were infringed be assured that there'll be no further infringement by the site? I think you've answered that, and I think unfortunately it's in the negative. As you were saying, Julia, it's like open warfare with these guys. They're still trying. But would it be correct to say that it's become more difficult for users to access? Or they need to be a little bit more inventive to access the content?
Well, it's more difficult now. They can access by Tor. Excuse me.
It seems Julien has had a coughing attack. That's very unfortunate. I can feel for him. My throat's going dry as well. Are you ready to come back, Julien? We can't hear you at the moment. Julien, you're still muted. Now, yes.
Okay. We can access by Tor network. It's by dark web. So, and it's not convenient for everyone to do that way. And you have to identify yourself by login. So it's more difficult than before. We think it's the main success for this of this action. It's very difficult now to access for
ordinary internet users.
If you're a kind of geek, it's okay for you. You find a way to access to the library, but it's not easy for.
You've got to be a bit of an expert. Yes, I understand. I think that's an important threshold. There's an interesting question/suggestion that I'm seeing in the chat here. Is there an internationally coordinated knowledge database about blocked illegal ebook websites? For example, for the blocking of websites, it is important to provide the access providers with new domain names and proxies and mirror sites, which will go live after the blocking. It could be helpful to coordinate the search for new Z libraries and similar operators' domains in order to have the same domains blocked internationally relatively quickly after they go live. I think that's a proposal for more collaboration. Can any of you, and this also goes to our UK colleagues, perhaps if you can end the sharing of the presentation, then we can see everybody again. What do you think of a proposal of sharing information at that level? Thanks, now we can see everyone. Any volunteers?
I guess the answer is no. There is not no such list. I believe WIPA have considered doing this, but again, I don't know. I don't think this is something that's happening soon. And then obviously, I think many organizations would possibly raise a concern on something like that unintentionally becoming an index of pirate sites for, people to go and access. So it's an interesting concept that would need to be, closely considered by, every industry, I think.
Thank you, Jack. Yes, it could cut both ways, I suppose, couldn't it? Final question with the request for a short answer to all of you, though. What's your understanding of the motivation of Zen Libraries operators? Is there anything more than just making money behind it?
I'm just saying money. To make money.
And they do make money, yes.
Yes.
Considerably, as you
Also.
said.
Mm.
Okay, thank you very much. Those have been fantastic presentations. Thank you all. I'd like to pass now to Vera Castañeda, who is the International Legal Advisor and IP Specialist at the IPA, to hear from Vera. What are your takeaways or conclusions after listening to our colleagues today? And there might be a tech problem here.
Thank you, Jessica. Would like to thank, first of all, big thanks to you, an excellent moderation as always, and big thanks to all of our speakers who were fantastic in explaining in almost an easy way this very long process on both countries to get to this amazing outcome. And I would just say that from an IPA point of view, as IPA does not run an enforcement program of our own, what we do and offer our members is support to get your legal frameworks and your policies right. And that's the very first step that we heard from both Claire and Catherine, that this is the basis of all other actions that unfold in terms of engaging law enforcement, but also having buy-in from your members, from the PA's members, into the investments, which are, as you've seen in both countries, quite significant. And that legal framework needs to be, of course, equipped with online enforcement mechanisms. We heard here today that although it is not ideal or perfect, but site blocking remains the first mechanism that enables publishers to get an outcome that is more efficient than notice and take down. And so in many countries of the European Union, site blocking procedures are available, either administrative or judicial. But this is because there is a directive, the 2001 directive that Catherine mentioned, indicating that this needs to be offered by every country. The same thing happens, of course, in the UK. And in the UK, there's also a specialized law enforcement agency dedicated to this work. So these two key components are essential. And unfortunately, we do see that in many countries of the Global South in particular, copyright laws still need to be modernized. For example, in Africa, there's only two countries, Kenya and Nigeria, and thank you to those members who are attending today from those countries, that are equipped with this law, and therefore there's benefit in studying how to do the next level, which is, as Claire pointed out, building a notice and take down portal, where your members can reach out to the PA and the PA can serve those notices. You can build contacts and networks with both law enforcement in your country, but also with ISPs to make that more efficient. And following that, then pursue the necessary lawsuits to get to the outcome of having the website blocked and not just access denied to a specific content. Something that became evident to me as well today is that this is an endless effort, because although it was quite successful, the path that our members built in terms of escalating to the international level, there still remains of this illegal platform out there. They still enable users to get access, even if they need to be skilled in dark web and other specialized places. And therefore, if we multiply this by the many, many illegal websites, we can see that the challenges that the industry is facing are huge. So thank you for leading the way forward. It was a pleasure to listen to all of you.
Indeed, I can only echo that. And thank you, Vera, for those conclusions of today. I'd like to thank all our fabulous speakers. You've really done an excellent job today. I'd also like to thank Vera for organizing this, and Olivier and James in the office who have made this possible. And I know how much work goes into that, and they have also done a stellar job. So thank you, everyone. Stay tuned. The IPA will be back with a webinar on AI and copyright in September. And we look forward to welcoming as many as possible of you there. And again, this webinar will be translated into a number of languages for broader access from our membership. So thank you very much. That's it for today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.